So you're driving down the street. Law enforcement official pulls you over and says, you know, I think you were speeding. How much money do you have? Well, I have $500. Based on my experience and training, I think that's drug money, hand it over. So then the state may or may not bring charges against you. The state will then file suit against your money, the state of Maryland versus $500. And then you have to come in, and as Senator Raskin said, you have to prove that your money is not guilty. So that's on sort of how it works. So it works on the state level, and it also works on the federal level with what's called equitable sharing. And Senator Raskin mentioned Attorney General Holder's order. I'm sorry, Senator, may I answer the question? Mentioned Attorney General Holder's order that deals with the adoption. There's also another portion of federal equitable sharing that has to do with administrative seizure. And what that is the state seizes the money, they hand it over to the feds, the federal system then sends you a letter that says, we have your money, we think it is drug money, and you can either sue to get it back, and if you don't within, it's a short period of time, I wish I had my experts here, but if you don't come in with this, within this window and sue to get your money back, then that's our money, and we're going to keep it. So it's an administrative piece. They actually don't have to go to court to prove that that was drug money. And so what that section does is it says that we're not going to participate in that, that we're not going to turn Marylanders' assets over unless it is prosecuted in federal court. And one thing I want to say about the equitable sharing is when it's done under Maryland law, then the money goes into the general fund either of the state or of that local jurisdiction. When it's done under equitable sharing, then the local agency gets 20% and the feds get 80%. And I have in my testimony a number of different examples, not all of the examples, but a number of different examples of monies that have been brought in under federal equitable sharing by the documents that 72 different agencies in Maryland file. That's just federal sharing. We don't know how much they bring in under state monies. I know I'm out of time. I will stop, Senator Zirkin. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Senator Norman, Senator Lee, Senator Muse.
Just real quick, I never understood why the simple fact that you might have 10 grand in cash became quasi-criminal in the federal system. I mean, 10 grand's 10 grand. People used to have more than that. Right. And now, what in particular prompted us to have to do these SARS reports or whatever they're called? Just because it's 10 grand. I mean, and I know that doesn't have too much to do with the forfeiture, but I don't understand why just the existence of possession of cash causes issues. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think that's a great question. I don't have an answer, and I agree with you.
I applaud Senator Raskin for bringing this bill, and also Sarah for you advocating for it. I could, you know, in immigrant communities, particularly those with limited English proficiency, you know, they often carry their earnings, which there are hard-earned, around with them instead of, you know, throwing it in a bank right away. And sometimes they carry the cash from their business to their home. Very often they're victims of robbery, but I see this as stealing probably by the government. Mm-hmm. So without any kind of process, and a lot of times they don't know the legal process. They can't speak the language, and they're intimidated by the government. So do you see a lot of this in the immigrant community and the minority community?
Well, Senator Lee, that's a great point, and it also goes to a lot of other communities where they don't have bank accounts and they do carry around cash. And one of the things that's important about this bill is we don't know, so we do need reporting on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see that profile that Senator Raskin made, and I mean, it sounds like a typical first-generation immigrant from China or Korea. Coming from a restaurant to,
you know, they carry around. That's a very typical, common scenario. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. couple of questions. One, let's take the scenario where it's $500. They take $500. Now you've got to go to court. Is it federal court? They have to go into federal court?
It
Or is
depends
it
on,
local court?
on who seizes it and how it
Okay.
was processed. It
If
could
you
go
go to
into
court-
state court or federal court.
As is now, the burden of proof is on you. It's on me to prove that. Which means I have to maybe get a lawyer. So by the time I get a lawyer to sue for my $500, I probably will owe $500. So most people are saying it's not worth it at certain, amount, which means we're just walking away with it. Is that what's happening?
Yes, Senator, exactly.
That's appalling. Thank you, and thank you for putting the bill in. Thank you very much.